Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to uncover the disturbing truth behind the Habsburgs. Imagine yourself not just reading dusty old history books, but actually standing amidst the sprawling, sun-drenched vineyards of a medieval Swiss county. Then suddenly finding yourself in the gilded halls of imperial palaces that span half a continent. You're not just observing, you're feeling the subtle shifts of power, breathing in the scent of ambition, and perhaps catching a whiff of something else. Something a little unsettling, passed down through generations. This isn't your usual dry history lesson. This is the real, unvarnished story of a family that conquered the world not primarily through swords and battle, but through an even more powerful, and perhaps more insidious, weapon marriage. Seriously, if you were trying to play the long game of dynastic power back then, you'd probably marry a distant cousin for strategic advantage. And let's just say, the consequences for your jawline might be a little pronounced. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the humble, rather obscure surroundings of the Aargau region of Switzerland, sometime in the 11th century. This is where the story of the Habsburgs truly begins. Not with mighty kings or emperors, but with a relatively minor noble family. Initially known as the House of Habsburg, named after their ancestral castle, Habsburg, or Hawk's Castle, you observe them as diligent, pragmatic landowners, slowly but steadily expanding their holdings through careful management, strategic alliances, and the occasional, localized skirmish. They are not conquerors on a grand scale, but rather patient accumulators, laying down the groundwork for future generations. You feel the slow, steady rhythm of medieval feudal life, the importance of land, loyalty, and the gradual building of local influence. It's like watching a small startup meticulously save every penny, dreaming of becoming a multinational corporation. Their first real taste of larger power comes in the late 13th century. You witness Rudolf, a Habsburg count, being elected King of the Romans in 1273. This isn't quite Holy Roman Emperor yet, but it's a significant step. He's chosen largely because the powerful German princes see him as a weak, easily controllable figure. You sense the common political miscalculation, underestimating a seemingly unassuming individual. Rudolf, however, proves them wrong. He is shrewd, determined, and possesses a surprising knack for turning limited power into lasting advantage. His true genius lies not in conquest, but in administration, and, crucially, in securing new dynastic holdings. Rudolf I's most significant acquisition is the Duchy of Austria and Styria in 1278. You observe him seizing these rich territories from King Ottokar II of Bohemia after a decisive victory at the Battle of Marchfeld. This acquisition is a game-changer. Austria, with its strategic location and fertile lands, becomes the new heartland of the Habsburg dominion. A far cry from their modest Swiss origins. You see them consolidating their power there, building palaces and fortresses, establishing a firm base from which to expand. This is the disturbing truth of their early rise, while often presented as a family that preferred marriage over war. Their initial key acquisition of Austria was certainly secured through brutal military force. Not just a quiet exchange of vows, it's like watching a seemingly peaceful corporate takeover that started with a hostile bid and a fierce proxy fight. From this Austrian base, the Habsburgs begin to implement their truly revolutionary and disturbingly effective strategy for empire building, belligerant allié to Felix Austria Nube, let others wage war, you. Fortunate Austria, marry. You see this motto come to life. instead of endlessly campaigning on bloody battlefields. They meticulously arrange strategic royal marriages. They choose spouses not for love or personal affection, but for their rich dowries, their ancestral lands, and their claims to powerful thrones across Europe. You feel the cold calculation behind these unions, the understanding that a marriage contract could be more powerful than a military treaty, and that a single wedding could bring vast territories under their control. You witness the painstaking process of these marital negotiations. Diplomats haggle over dowries, lineages are meticulously scrutinized, and political advantages are weighed against potential disadvantages. Young Habsburg princesses and princes are sent across Europe, often as mere children, to marry into foreign royal houses, becoming pawns in a grand dynastic game. You feel the profound sacrifice of personal happiness for the sake of family power, a theme that will run throughout Habsburg history. The most famous early example of this strategy is the series of marriages that bring the Burgundian Netherlands, modern-day Belgium, and Netherlands into the Habsburg fold. You observe Maximilian I, an early Habsburg emperor, marrying Mary of Burgundy in 1477. This union is a triumph, securing rich and strategically vital territories. You see the immense wealth and economic power that the Netherlands brings to the Habsburgs, a significant boost to their prestige and resources. Their marital strategy then expands to the Iberian Peninsula. You follow the complex diplomatic efforts that lead to the marriage of Maximilian's son, Philip the Handsome, to Joanna of Castile, daughter of the powerful Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. This particular union, though seemingly less impactful at first, turns out to be their biggest jackpot through a series of unexpected deaths. Joanna, dubbed the Mad due to her mental fragility, inherits the vast Spanish kingdoms and their burgeoning overseas empire. You feel the profound good fortune, combined with the strategic planning, that transforms the Habsburgs from powerful Central European rulers into masters of a global empire. It's almost like winning the biggest lottery jackpot imaginable. But the ticket was a marriage contract signed decades earlier. This rapid expansion, achieved largely through marriage, is both impressive and inherently fragile. You observe the challenges of governing such a sprawling, diverse collection of territories, each with its own laws, languages, and customs. The sheer geographical distance between their various domains from Austria to Burgundy, from Spain to Naples, creates immense administrative difficulties. You feel the growing pains of a truly multinational empire, constantly struggling to maintain cohesion and prevent internal revolts or external aggression. An intriguing, yet often overlooked, detail about their early marriage strategy is the extensive use of double and triple marriage alliances. They often married off multiple children to members of the same foreign royal family, or even arranged reciprocal marriages between their own children and those of another dynasty. This created an incredibly dense web of kinship, cementing alliances and ensuring that even if one marriage failed to produce the desired heir, another might. This foresight and meticulous planning were key to their dynastic longevity. The disturbing truth behind the Habsburgs' early rise is that while they championed the motto, "Marry, don't war," their expansion was anything but bloodless. The acquisition of Austria involved a decisive battle, and while marriages brought territories, those territories often came with their own populations, languages, and cultures that resisted absorption, leading to internal revolts and external conflicts fought by Habsburg armies. Moreover, the very act of dynastic marriage, while seemingly peaceful, was often a cold, calculated transaction that sacrificed the personal happiness of individuals for the sake of political power, leading to generations of inbreeding with their own disturbing consequences, which you will soon witness. By the early 16th century, the stage is set for the culmination of this strategy with Charles V, a man who would inherit a global empire of unprecedented scale. The Habsburgs, having risen from obscurity through a blend of shrewd political calculation, strategic marriages, and occasional military might, are now poised to dominate Europe and beyond, carrying with them the seeds of both their immense power and their future. Inherent flaws, you now find yourself standing at the very apex of Habsburg power in the early 16th century, as Charles V inherits an empire of truly dizzying, unprecedented scale. This isn't just a kingdom, it's a vast collection of territories across Europe and, crucially, a burgeoning global dominion that touches every continent. You feel the immense, almost suffocating, weight of this inherited power, a legacy forged not through conquest alone, but through the Habsburgs' masterful strategy of marriage. Not war. You observe Charles V, a young man who comes of age amidst this extraordinary inheritance. Born in Ghent in 1500, he is the grandson of the very monarchs, whose strategic unions you recall Maximilian the Foreign of Austria, a Habsburg, and Mary of Burgundy, and Ferdinand II of Aragon, and Isabella the Freies of Castile, the Catholic monarchs of Spain. Through a series of unexpected deaths in his immediate family, Charles inherits all of it in a few short years. He becomes King of Spain, including its vast American colonies, Naples, and Sicily, Lord of the Netherlands and Burgundy, Archduke of Austria, and head of the Habsburg lands. And finally, in 1519, he is elected Holy Roman Emperor, making him the nominal overlord of a patchwork of German states. You feel the sheer impossibility of governing such a sprawling, diverse, and geographically dispersed empire. It's an empire where, as the famous saying goes, the sun never sets, a concept that would later be applied to the British Empire, but originated with Charles V's domains. You see him constantly traveling, endlessly moving between his various territories, from Spain to the Netherlands, from Germany to Italy, attempting to personally manage his vast inheritance. This constant movement underscores the administrative nightmare of holding such diverse lands together, each with its own laws, customs, and languages. It's like trying to run a dozen different countries simultaneously, all without the benefit of modern communication or travel. The disturbing truth of this immense inheritance, acquired largely through careful dynastic marriages, is that it brought with it an equally immense burden of inherited conflicts and challenges. Charles V didn't just inherit lands, he inherited a multi-front war on an unprecedented scale. Conflict with France. You observe his lifelong rivalry with Francis I of France, who feels encircled by Habsburg lands. This leads to a series of brutal, costly wars in Italy and along the French borders, consuming vast resources and preventing Charles from fully focusing on other issues. The Ottoman threat. You feel the existential dread emanating from the east as the formidable Ottoman Empire, under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, pushes deep into Central Europe, besieging Vienna in 1529. Charles V, as Holy Roman Emperor and Archduke of Austria, is the primary defender of Christian Europe against this powerful Islamic expansion, the Protestant Reformation. Perhaps the most profound and unsettling challenge is the explosion of the Protestant Reformation in Germany, led by Martin Luther. You recall how the sale of indulgences exacerbated by papal expenditures? Remember the Borgias fueled Luther's protests. Charles V, as a devout Catholic and Holy Roman Emperor, sees it as his sacred duty to defend the Catholic Church and suppress heresy within his lands. This leads to bitter religious wars and a deep division within his German territories, a conflict he ultimately fails to resolve. You witness Charles V's relentless efforts to manage these simultaneous crises. He is a man of deep religious conviction, often torn between his imperial duties and his spiritual beliefs. He is also a skilled military commander when necessary, leading his troops into battle, though he preferred diplomatic solutions if possible. But the sheer scale of the challenges means he is constantly reacting, never fully able to resolve one crisis before another erupts. He is truly trying to hold the world together, and you can sense the immense strain on him. The constant need for funds to finance these endless wars and maintain his vast administration is another persistent challenge. You see the vast wealth pouring in from the Spanish colonies in the Americas, the gold and silver of Mexico and Peru. This colonial wealth, acquired through brutal conquest and exploitation of indigenous populations, fuels the Habsburg war machine. However, it also contributes to inflation in Europe, and often arrives in irregular shipments, leaving Charles perpetually short of cash, forcing him to borrow heavily from bankers, including the Fugger family, and later, even his own subjects. This constant financial strain is a disturbing truth of imperial ambition, an intriguing yet often overlooked detail about Charles V's reign is his deep personal connection to music. He was a skilled musician and a patron of composers, often using music to find solace from the crushing burdens of his rule. His court was famous for its musical ensembles, and he himself played several instruments. This personal passion offers a glimpse into the man beneath the weighty imperial robes. Seeking a moment of peace amidst the incessant demands of his vast empire, the very concept of a universal Christian empire, which Charles V earnestly attempted to embody, was fundamentally challenged during his reign. The rise of powerful nation-states, the schism of the Reformation, and the growing global reach of empires meant that the medieval ideal of a unified Christendom under one emperor was increasingly obsolete. You feel the slow, inexorable shift in the geopolitical landscape as the world moves from a fragmented medieval order towards a more complex, multipolar early modern era. The disturbing truth behind Charles V's reign is that despite inheriting the largest empire the world had seen since Rome, and despite his tireless efforts, he ultimately failed to achieve his core objectives. He could not crush the Reformation, he could not decisively defeat the Ottomans, and he could not overcome the deep-seated rivalries with France. His vast inheritance, a testament to Habsburg marital prowess, became a burden too heavy for one man to bear. It's like being given every toy in the world, but all of them are broken and need constant, expensive repairs. In 1556, exhausted and disillusioned, Charles V takes the extraordinary step of abdicating all his titles. Dividing his vast empire, he retires to a monastery in Spain, seeking peace and quiet after decades of relentless struggle. You witness his profound weariness, the admission of a man who fought valiantly but found the forces against him simply too overwhelming. His brother, Ferdinand I, inherits the Holy Roman Empire and the Austrian Habsburg lands, while his son, Philip II, inherits Spain, its colonies, the Netherlands, and Naples. This division, a pragmatic acknowledgement of the empire's unmanageable size, effectively creates the two main branches of the Habsburg family, the Austrian Habsburgs and the Spanish Habsburgs. The sun may not have set on their empire, but it certainly cast a long, fractured shadow, and the seeds of their future genetic peculiarities, a truly disturbing truth, were already deeply sown. You now embark on a deeper, more unsettling exploration of the Habsburg legacy, moving beyond their vast territorial acquisitions to uncover one of their most distinctive and ultimately disturbing truths, the Habsburg jaw. This isn't just a facial feature, it's a physical manifestation of centuries of deliberate dynastic policy. A visible marker of their relentless strategy of intermarriage that, while immensely successful in consolidating power, eventually left a chilling genetic footprint across generations of emperors and queens. You feel the uncomfortable reality of lineage taking precedence over biology, and the slow, inevitable consequences of such choices. You observe the earliest appearances of this peculiar trait. It begins subtly, a slight prognathism, an outward protrusion of the lower jaw and chin, coupled with a thick lower lip. You see it as an unusual, but not yet debilitating characteristic that crops up in portraits of early Habsburgs. However, as the centuries progress and the family's commitment to strategic inbreeding intensifies, this feature becomes increasingly pronounced, almost a caricature of itself. The disturbing truth behind the Habsburg jaw is its direct correlation to their infamous marriage strategy. You recall their motto, "Let others wage war. You unfortunate Austria marry. This wasn't just about marrying into other powerful European royal houses. It was also about marrying within the Habsburg family itself, or with closely related dynasties. Cousins married cousins, uncles married nieces, all to keep power, wealth, and prestigious titles firmly within the family's control. You feel the almost suffocating insularity of this policy, driven by the belief that purity of bloodline equated to purity of claim and political power. It's like watching a family play an endless game of Monopoly, but they keep buying each other's properties to ensure no one outside the family ever owns anything. This practice of endogamy, or marriage within a specific social group in this case, the highly limited pool of European royalty led to an unprecedented level of inbreeding, while not every Habsburg displayed the jaw. The repeated intermarriage within a small genetic pool significantly increased the likelihood of recessive genes, including those for physical deformities and genetic disorders. Expressing themselves, you witness the genetic dice being rolled again and again, with increasingly predictable and often tragic results. The Habsburg jaw, formerly known as mandibular prognathism, became the most recognizable physical symptom of this prolonged inbreeding. You see it clearly depicted in portraits of later Habsburgs, particularly the Spanish branch. The elongated jaw, often coupled with a malocclusion, a misalignment of the teeth, made chewing and speaking difficult. Their portraits, designed to project majesty, sometimes inadvertently reveal the physical toll of their dynastic strategy. You feel a strange mixture of awe at their power and pity for their physical burdens, knowing these were self-inflicted, albeit for what they believed were legitimate dynastic reasons, and intriguing and somewhat grotesque. Detail is the descriptions from contemporary accounts, while portraits might soften the features. Observers often noted the difficulty some Habsburgs had in closing their mouths, leading to perpetual drooling, particularly during speeches or public appearances. This, combined with a thick tongue, could also lead to speech impediments, making them difficult to understand. Imagine trying to command an empire when you struggle to articulate your words clearly, beyond the jaw. Prolonged inbreeding led to a host of other debilitating physical and mental health issues. You'll delve deeper into the mental and physical decay later. But for now, you sense the accumulating genetic burdens, high infant mortality rates. Many Habsburg children died young, often succumbing to illnesses that healthier populations might have survived. Reduced fertility. Some Habsburgs struggled to produce heirs, exacerbating the very problem of succession that the inbreeding was designed to prevent. Increased susceptibility to disease. A weakened immune system due to limited genetic diversity made them more vulnerable to common ailments. Cognitive impairments. While difficult to definitively prove from historical records, there are indications of learning difficulties and intellectual deficiencies in some later Habsburgs. Particularly in the Spanish line, the disturbing truth is that the Habsburgs were often fully aware of this physical trait being passed down, and they even seemed to accept it as a family characteristic, a badge of their ancient lineage. For them, the benefits of maintaining power through endogamy outweighed the visible physical consequences. The purity of bloodline, ensuring an undisputed claim to vast territories, was seen as paramount, even if it meant sacrificing the physical and mental well-being of future generations. It's a chilling demonstration of how dynastic ambition can overshadow basic biological realities. Historians still debate the extent to which the Habsburgs truly understood the genetic implications of their inbreeding, or if they simply viewed these traits as family characteristics rather than symptoms of a dangerous practice. Modern genetic science has definitively linked the jaw to their inbred lineage, the most famous and tragic. Example of the Habsburg jaw's severe manifestation is Charles II of Spain, a later Spanish Habsburg, whom you will encounter more fully soon. You glimpse his portraits and descriptions, his jaw so pronounced that his upper and lower teeth could not meet, making chewing almost impossible, his tongue so large that he could barely speak intelligibly, and a litany of other physical and mental ailments that plagued him throughout his short, tortured life. He becomes the living embodiment of the genetic cost of unchecked dynastic ambition. The Habsburg jaw, therefore, serves as a powerful, unsettling symbol. It is a visual representation of their unique strategy for empire building. Marriage, not war, but it also subtly reveals the hidden long-term costs of that strategy. It speaks of closed genetic pools, of the relentless pursuit of power at any biological price, and of the disturbing truth that, sometimes, the most effective political tools can leave the most profound and unsettling physical legacies. As you continue to explore the Habsburg story, this distinctive feature will serve as a constant, silent reminder of the profound consequences of their dynastic choices. You now delve into the awe-inspiring, yet ultimately tragic, story of the Spanish Habsburgs, the branch of the family that inherited the vast and lucrative territories from Charles the Sovereign. This isn't just a tale of power, it's a saga of gold, God, and a slow, agonizing decline, fueled by religious zealotry, endless wars, and the accumulating burden of generations of inbreeding. You feel the immense weight of empire, the intoxicating scent of New World riches, and the chilling chill of religious dogma that ultimately brought this mighty branch to its knees. When Charles V abdicated in 1556, he divided his colossal empire. You recall that his son, Philip II, inherited Spain, its vast overseas empire including the Americas, the Philippines, and territories in Italy, the Netherlands, and Burgundy. This made Philip II the most powerful monarch in Europe, ruling over a truly global dominion that dwarfed anything seen before. You see him, a serious, diligent, and deeply pious king, often described as reserved and meticulous. He governs from his austere palace, El Escorial, a sprawling complex that serves as a monastery, royal palace, and mausoleum, reflecting his profound devotion and his sense of kingly duty. It's like watching a CEO who also happens to be a monk. Running a global corporation from a monastic cell, Philip II's reign, 1556 to 1598, is marked by two overarching and ultimately debilitating obsessions: Catholicism and military conquest. You observe his unwavering commitment to defending and propagating the Catholic faith throughout Europe and his vast empire. He sees himself as God's chosen instrument, the primary defender of the Counter-Reformation against the rising tide of Protestantism. This fervent zeal drives his foreign policy and fuels relentless, incredibly expensive wars. The gold and silver pouring in from the Americas provides the fuel for this ambition. You witness the constant flow of treasure fleets, laden with riches extracted through brutal colonial exploitation of indigenous populations in Mexico and Peru. This wealth makes Spain the envy of Europe and allows Philip to finance the largest standing army and navy of his time. You feel the irresistible allure of this gold, but also the brutal truth of its origins, stained with the blood and suffering of millions. However, this immense wealth comes with a disturbing truth. It is never quite enough. Philip II engages in a series of costly and ultimately ruinous wars. The Dutch Revolt. You observe the brutal, decades-long struggle to suppress the Protestant Netherlands, who rebelled against Spanish rule and religious persecution. This endless war drains Spanish resources and manpower. Becoming a festering wound on the empire's side, you feel the stubborn defiance of the Dutch and the unwavering, yet ultimately futile determination of Philip to crush them. Wars with France and England. You recall Philip's rivalry with France and his efforts to counter English Protestantism, culminating in the disastrous Spanish Armada in 1588. The defeat of the Armada is a devastating blow to Spanish prestige and power, a clear sign that even immense wealth and religious zeal cannot guarantee military success. endless wars. Combined with Philip's lavish spending on court and building projects, lead to repeated state bankruptcies, you see Spain, despite the steady flow of American silver, declaring bankruptcy multiple times during Philip's reign. This financial mismanagement, a chilling symptom of their insatiable ambition, undermines the very economic stability that the American gold was supposed to ensure. It's like watching someone win the lottery every week, but still constantly be in debt because they keep buying more lottery tickets and luxury yachts. An intriguing, yet often overlooked, detail about Philip II is his obsession with bureaucracy and paperwork. He famously governed his vast empire by dispatching an enormous volume of letters and directives, meticulously reviewed and often annotated by his own hand. He was a micromanager par excellence, believing that personal oversight was the key to good governance. This led to incredibly slow decision-making, as orders could take months to reach distant parts of his empire and replies even longer. His meticulousness, while admirable in theory, often created paralyzing inefficiency in practice, hindering his ability to respond quickly to crises. The disturbing truth that begins to manifest severely in the Spanish Habsburg line is the accelerating toll of inbreeding. You recall the Habsburg jaw from earlier. In the Spanish branch, the practice of marrying close relatives intensified even further than among the Austrian Habsburgs. Driven by a desperate desire to keep vast territories within the family and to maintain dynastic purity, this led to a dramatic increase in physical deformities and debilitating genetic illnesses. You see portraits of later Spanish Habsburgs, revealing increasingly exaggerated features and signs of severe genetic conditions. The most tragic and poignant example of this genetic decline is Charles II of Spain, 1661 to 1700, the last of the Spanish Habsburg kings. You witness his agonizing existence. He is born with the most severe manifestation of the Habsburg jaw. His upper and lower jaws are so misaligned that he cannot chew his food, and his tongue is so large he can barely speak intelligibly, often drooling uncontrollably. But the physical deformities are only part of the story. He suffers from a litany of debilitating health issues from birth-frequent illnesses, convulsions, muscle weakness, and most tragically, severe cognitive impairments. He struggles with basic motor skills and intellectual development, often barely able to walk or talk, remaining childlike in many ways throughout his short life. You feel the profound pathos of Charles II's existence, a king of the vast Spanish Empire, yet physically and mentally incapable of ruling effectively. He is a mere puppet in the hands of his court, manipulated by ambitious factions and foreign powers. His life is a testament to the devastating biological cost of unchecked dynastic ambition. He lives in constant pain and illness, a prisoner in his own body, the living embodiment of his family's genetic hubris. His inability to produce an heir, he was likely infertile. Another consequence of inbreeding ultimately precipitates the War of the Spanish Succession upon his death, a devastating European conflict over who would inherit his vast domains. It's like watching a once proud lion slowly waste away, devoured from within by an unseen disease. The disturbing truth of the Spanish Habsburg decline is that it was not primarily caused by external enemies, but by a combination of unsustainable ambition, economic mismanagement fueled by easily acquired gold, and the slow, insidious decay wrought by generations of inbreeding. Their unwavering religious zeal, while providing a powerful ideological backbone, also led to rigid policies and costly wars that ultimately exhausted the empire. By the end of Charles II's reign, the Spanish Habsburgs are a spent force, their empire severely weakened, their treasury perpetually empty, and their final king a living symbol of their genetic and dynastic exhaustion. Their legacy is one of astounding global reach, fueled by New World gold and religious fervor, but also one of deep-seated fanaticism, endless warfare, and a horrifying genetic burden that finally brought this mighty line to its knees. Their fall, though slow and agonizing, was as inevitable as the setting sun on their once boundless empire. You now move into a period of profound upheaval in Europe, one deeply entwined with the Habsburgs' pervasive power and their unwavering commitment to Catholicism. This is the era of the religious wars, brutal conflicts that tore the continent apart, fueled by theological divides, political ambitions, and the raw savagery of human fanaticism. You feel the crushing weight of religious dogma, the chilling ferocity of belief, and the horrifying destruction wrought when faith becomes a justification for mass violence. This is a disturbing truth that casts a long, bloody shadow over the Habsburg legacy. You recall that Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, battled the Protestant Reformation in Germany throughout his reign. His abdication and the division of his empire ultimately reflected his failure to crush the Protestant movement. However, the fight for religious uniformity continued with relentless fervor under both branches of the family, the Spanish Habsburgs under Philip II and the Austrian Habsburgs under Ferdinand I and his successors. You observe their unwavering commitment to the Catholic Counter-Reformation, viewing themselves as God's chosen defenders against heresy. The most widespread and devastating of these conflicts is the series of wars known collectively as the Wars of Religion, culminating in the horrifying 30 Years' War, 1618-1648. You witness the continent plunged into unparalleled chaos and destruction. This isn't just a political conflict. It's a brutal ideological struggle where entire populations are caught in the crossfire. You feel the pervasive fear, the constant threat of marauding armies, the widespread famine, and the rampant disease that follow in their wake. It's like watching an entire continent tear itself apart, driven by unyielding convictions and a terrifying willingness to die and kill for God. The Spanish Habsburgs, under Philip II and his successors, were the primary aggressors in this religious struggle. You recall their relentless efforts to suppress the Protestant revolt in the Netherlands. This was not merely a political rebellion, it was a religious war where Spanish forces, committed to eradicating Calvinism, employed brutal tactics, including massacres and forced conversions. You see the sheer brutality of the Spanish Inquisition extended to these territories, aiming to root out heresy with ruthless efficiency. This prolonged, agonizing conflict drained Spain's resources and manpower for decades, becoming a bleeding wound on its side. But Philip II never wavered in his belief that he was fighting for God. Simultaneously, the Austrian Habsburgs, as Holy Roman Emperors, faced the rising tide of Protestantism within their own German territories and hereditary lands. You observe their attempts to re-Catholicize their domains, often through coercion and suppression. The Peace of Augsburg, 1515, which had granted princes the right to choose the religion of their lands, cuius regio, aius religio, whose realm, his religion, proved to be an insufficient solution. As religious passions continued to simmer and explode into localized conflicts, the 30 Years' War is the horrifying culmination of these religious tensions. You witness its devastating impact. Arguably the most destructive conflict in European history before the World Wars, it begins as a localized religious dispute in Bohemia, a Habsburg territory, but quickly escalates into a continent-wide struggle involving all major European powers. You see armies of various nationalities: Imperial Habsburg, Swedish, French, Danish, crisscrossing the Holy Roman Empire, laying waste to the land. The brutality of the 30 Years' War is almost unimaginable. You feel the immense suffering of the civilian population. Villages are plundered and burned, crops are destroyed, and widespread famine leads to cannibalism in some areas. Mercenary armies, often unpaid, live off the land, terrorizing the populace and leaving a trail of death and destruction. Diseases like the bubonic plague, carried by soldiers, decimate populations. You hear the screams of the innocent, the desperate prayers of the dying, and the chilling silence that falls over once thriving regions. It's like a nightmarish landscape painted by Bosch. but brought to terrifying life across Central Europe. The Habsburg emperors, particularly Ferdinand II and Ferdinand III, were staunch champions of the Catholic cause, often pushing for the complete eradication of Protestantism within the Holy Roman Empire. You see them directing their armies, issuing decrees that aim to restore Catholic dominance, and rejecting any compromise. Their unwavering religious conviction, while perhaps admirable to their supporters, prolonged the conflict and contributed directly to the unimaginable human suffering. An intriguing, yet horrifying, detail of the 30 Years' War is the sheer number of mercenaries involved. Armies were not composed primarily of loyal national soldiers, but of paid professional fighters, often with little loyalty beyond their wages. This led to a complete breakdown of discipline, as these armies often resorted to widespread looting, rape, and destruction. Irrespective of whether they were in enemy or friendly territory, the Habsburgs relied heavily on these mercenary forces, inadvertently contributing to the devastating impact on their own civilian populations. The disturbing truth of the Habsburgs' role in the religious wars is that their unwavering commitment to Catholic orthodoxy, combined with their vast imperial power, made them central figures in conflicts that caused unimaginable human suffering. Their belief in divine right and their sacred duty to defend the church propelled them into long, costly wars that decimated populations, crippled economies, and ultimately failed to achieve lasting religious unity. While other powers also played a role, the Habsburgs' sheer scale and their unyielding religious zeal made them architects of immense destruction. Historians still debate whether the 30 Years' War was primarily a religious conflict, or if religious differences were merely a pretext for underlying political and dynastic rivalries. With the Habsburgs often caught between their piety and their imperial ambitions, the legacy of these religious wars profoundly shaped Europe. They led to the rise of new powers, the decline of others, and fundamentally altered the balance of power. For the Habsburgs, while they remained powerful, the wars drained their resources and cemented a deep-seated resistance to their imperial authority in many parts of the Holy Roman Empire. They learned, through immense bloodshed, that religious uniformity could not be imposed by force across such a diverse empire. By the end of the 30 Years' War, the Habsburg dream of a unified, Catholic Holy Roman Empire was shattered. The Peace of Westphalia 1648 recognized the principle of state sovereignty and codified a more pluralistic religious landscape in Europe, while the Habsburgs retained their hereditary lands and the imperial title. Their authority within the Holy Roman Empire was significantly diminished. Their legacy from this era is a double-edged sword. They fought for their faith with unwavering conviction. But in doing so, they became inextricably linked to a period of horrifying destruction and unending strife. A stark reminder of the devastating consequences when religious zeal meets imperial ambition, you now shift your focus to a truly remarkable, yet often overlooked, figure in the Habsburg dynasty, Maria Theresa, in the mid-18th century. She ascends to power not as a preordained male heir, but as a woman in a deeply patriarchal Europe. Facing an unprecedented challenge to her family's very existence, you witness her extraordinary struggle to preserve her empire against all odds, a testament to her iron will, political genius, and unwavering determination that fundamentally reshapes the Habsburg monarchy. This is a disturbing truth for the male rulers of Europe, who significantly underestimated her. When Emperor Charles VI, Maria Theresa's father, dies in 1740, he leaves behind no male heir. For years, he had desperately tried to secure the succession for his daughter through the Pragmatic Sanction, a legal document recognized by most European powers that guaranteed Maria Theresa's right to inherit all Habsburg lands. You feel the immense pressure on him. Knowing that female succession was often a trigger for wars of succession in Europe, however, despite the signed agreements, promises proved to be as flimsy as parchment when power is at stake. Immediately upon her father's death, You witness the betrayal, Prussia. Under the ambitious young King Frederick II, later the Great, immediately invades Silesia, a rich Habsburg province. This act sparks the War of the Austrian Succession. 1740-1748. You see European powers, including France, Bavaria, and Saxony, cynically breaking their promises and seizing the opportunity to carve up the vast Habsburg inheritance. You feel the profound injustice and the existential threat to the young, inexperienced Maria Theresa, who, at 23, suddenly finds herself fighting for her family's survival against a coalition of powerful enemies. It's like watching a pack of wolves descend upon a seemingly vulnerable young leader. Believing she's an easy meal, Maria Theresa's initial position is incredibly precarious. She is a woman, facing deeply entrenched misogynistic attitudes from male rulers who believe she will be weak and easily defeated. She is pregnant and has little practical experience in governance or military command. Her treasury is empty, and her army is ill-prepared. Yet, you observe her transformation from a young, uncertain archduchess into a formidable empress. She appeals directly to her Hungarian nobles, famously appearing before their Diet assembly with her infant son, Joseph, in her arms, making an impassioned plea for their loyalty. You feel the emotional power of this moment as the Hungarian magnates, moved by her courage and vulnerability, famously declare, Moriamur pro rege nostro Maria Theresa. Let us die for our king, Maria Theresa. This secures crucial military support that saves her early reign. Throughout the War of the Austrian Succession, you witness Maria Theresa's relentless determination. She is a tireless administrator, working ceaselessly to reform her army, manage state finances, and conduct complex diplomacy. She demonstrates a shrewd understanding of strategy, often outmaneuvering her male opponents. She forges new alliances, including with Great Britain, to counter the formidable coalition against her. You feel her iron will, her refusal to succumb to despair even in the face of overwhelming odds. She never allows herself to be seen as weak or emotional, projecting an image of stoic strength, although the war eventually ends with her retaining most of her territories. She is forced to cede Silesia to Prussia, a loss that rankles her deeply. This perceived injustice fuels her next major conflict, the 7 Years' War. 1756-1763, often called the First World War due to its global reach. You observe Maria Theresa orchestrating a diplomatic revolution, famously forging an alliance with her traditional enemy, France, to reclaim Silesia from Frederick the Great. This is a truly audacious move, completely overturning centuries of European power dynamics. You feel the strategic brilliance of this reversal of alliances, a testament to her innovative diplomacy. The 7 Years' War is another brutal, costly conflict. You see vast armies clashing across Central Europe, funded by the various powers despite her best efforts and initial successes. Maria Theresa ultimately fails to regain Silesia from Frederick the Great, who proves to be an equally formidable military genius. However, despite the loss of Silesia, her ability to hold her empire together against such powerful adversaries, and to emerge from these wars with her lands largely intact, cements her reputation as one of Europe's most capable rulers. She proved definitively that a woman could not only inherit, but also defend a vast and complex empire, and intriguing and somewhat progressive for her time. Detail about Maria Theresa is her profound commitment to state reform. She understood that merely winning wars was not enough. Her empire needed to be modernized to survive in a rapidly changing Europe. You see her implementing sweeping reforms in education, taxation, and the military. She establishes new schools and universities, including the Theresian Military Academy, to create a more educated bureaucracy and professional officer corps. She centralizes administration, streamlining the inefficient Habsburg bureaucracy, and she reforms the tax system to ensure fairer collection and greater revenue for the state. This dedication to internal strengthening makes her reign truly transformative, laying the groundwork for a more cohesive and efficient Austrian state. It's like watching a CEO not just win a hostile takeover, but then meticulously restructure the entire company from the ground up. The disturbing truth of Maria Theresa's reign, particularly for the male rulers who underestimated her, is her sheer, uncompromising determination to secure her family's power and legacy, even if it meant sacrificing personal happiness or conventional expectations. She was a deeply devoted mother. She had 16 children, including the future Emperor Joseph II and Marie Antoinette of France, often balancing the immense demands of governance with her extensive family life. Yet, her dynastic ambition was paramount. She strategically married off her children to secure alliances across Europe, often without regard for their personal desires, ensuring a vast network of Habsburg influence. Much like her early ancestors, her legacy is immense. She inherited a crumbling, decentralized empire and bequeathed a modernized, centralized, and secure one to her son. She proved that a female monarch could be as, if not more, capable than her male counterparts, forever challenging prevailing notions of gender and power. Her reign is a testament to resilience, strategic genius, and an unwavering will to survive. She faced the biggest test of the Habsburg dynastic strategy, a female succession, and emerged victorious, ensuring the continued prominence of her family on the European stage for another century and a half. Her reign is a powerful and enduring part of the Habsburg story, demonstrating that immense internal strength could overcome even the most daunting external threats. Even if the underlying genetic vulnerabilities remained, you now descend into the solemn and chilling depths of the imperial crypt in Vienna, the final resting place of centuries of Habsburg emperors, empresses, and their many descendants. This isn't just a burial site. It's a profound, tangible testament to the dynasty's immense power, their deep Catholic piety, and, subtly, the disturbing truths of their long and complex reign. You feel the cold stone, the silence echoing with countless untold stories, and the overwhelming weight of history pressed into every sarcophagus. The imperial crypt, or Kaisergruft, beneath the Capuchin Church in Vienna, serves as the primary burial site for the Habsburg dynasty from the early 17th century until the end of the monarchy in 1918. You observe the sheer number of coffins, row upon row of elaborate sarcophagi ranging from simple, austere designs to colossal, Baroque masterpieces adorned with intricate carvings and allegorical figures. Each coffin represents a life lived, a reign, a tragedy, or a triumph, all gathered in this silent, subterranean mausoleum. It's like walking through a vast underground library of power, where each book is a human life, encased in metal and stone. The design and material of the sarcophagi often reflect the era of the interred monarch. From the more restrained early Baroque to the flamboyant Rococo and neoclassical styles, you see the famous double coffin of Maria Theresa and her husband, Emperor Francis I or Stephen, a monumental bronze creation depicting the devoted couple on top, a powerful symbol of their enduring partnership and dynastic success. This monument is a testament to her legacy, which you recently explored, securing the future of the Habsburgs. However, beyond the grandeur and solemnity, the imperial crypt also reveals a disturbing truth about the Habsburgs' approach to death and eternity. You notice the peculiar tradition of separate burials for the heart and internal organs. While the body rests in the imperial crypt, the hearts are often placed in the Herzgruft heart crypt in the Augustinian Church, and the entrails in the ducal crypt in St. Stephen's Cathedral. This practice, rooted in medieval beliefs about the preservation of relics and the spiritual significance of various organs, seems unsettlingly clinical by modern standards. A physical fragmentation of the royal person. You feel the strange detachment, The scientific precision applied to the sacred act of burial, as if even in death, the imperial body could be meticulously categorized and divided. It's like a macabre form of anatomical archiving. Preserving parts of a person in different locations for different purposes. The presence of so many children's coffins is another poignant and disturbing aspect of the crypt. You observe numerous smaller sarcophagi, some exquisitely adorned, belonging to infants and young children who died prematurely. This serves as a stark reminder of the high infant mortality rates of the era, but also, subtly, hints at the genetic weaknesses that plagued the Habsburg line due to centuries of inbreeding. While common for royal families of the time, the sheer number of early deaths among the Habsburgs often raised quiet questions, hinting at underlying vulnerabilities. The symbolism within the crypt is rich and deliberate. You see allegorical figures representing virtues, triumphs, and the vast dominions ruled by the deceased. Lions symbolize strength, eagles represent the Holy Roman Empire, and crowns signify earthly power. Yet, within this grand display, there's also a profound sense of humility, as many sarcophagi feature inscriptions emphasizing the transient nature of earthly power and the ultimate equality in death. This duality, between immense pride and quiet piety as a constant theme, is an intriguing, yet somber. Detail is the tradition surrounding the burial of a Habsburg emperor. When a new Habsburg ruler died, their coffin would be brought to the door of the Capuchin church. The Capuchin friar in charge would ask, "Who seeks entrance?" The herald would then announce the deceased's full list of titles, often stretching to dozens of impressive names: King of Jerusalem, Duke of Lorraine, Grand Prince of Transylvania, etc. The friar would then respond, "We know him not," the herald would repeat, shortening the titles. Only when the herald announced the deceased simply as a mortal, a sinner, would the friar reply, "Then let him enter." This ritual, though brief, was a powerful, symbolic reminder that before God, even the most powerful emperor was merely a humble human being, a chilling counterpoint to their earthly majesty. The imperial crypt stands as a physical testament to the Habsburgs' unwavering Catholic faith. You observe the numerous religious symbols, the constant presence of crucifixes, and the dedication of the Capuchin friars who guard the crypt. For the Habsburgs, their divine right to rule was inextricably linked to their role as defenders of the Catholic Church. This piety, however, often came with its own disturbing truth, the zealous enforcement of religious uniformity, as you witnessed in the religious wars, leading to persecution and bloodshed. The quiet sanctity of the crypt belies the fervent, often violent, religious conflicts that defined so much of their rule. The crypt also implicitly reveals the dynastic strategies that defined the Habsburgs. The presence of so many intermarried relatives, the intertwining lineages, and the shared features visible in their death masks or sculpted effigies subtly hint at the policy of endogamy that secured their power, but also contributed to their genetic decline. You can almost trace the family tree through the arrangement of the coffins, recognizing the powerful alliances and the unfortunate consequences of their relentless pursuit of pure bloodlines. The most profound impact of the imperial crypt is its ability to ground the abstract concept of a long-ruling dynasty in the concrete reality of human lives and deaths. You are surrounded by the physical remains of the emperors who shaped Europe, the empresses who endured immense pressure, and the children whose lives were cut tragically short. Each sarcophagus is a silent sentinel, bearing witness to centuries of power, ambition, and the ultimate inevitability of mortality. The disturbing truth of the Habsburg crypt is that while it is a grand monument to a powerful dynasty, it also serves as a chilling reminder of the human cost of their ambition. The solemn silence seems to whisper of the personal sacrifices made for the sake of empire, the genetic burdens passed down through generations, and the often brutal realities of power. It is a place of peace. Yet it evokes the turbulent history of a family that ruled for centuries, leaving an indelible, complex mark on Europe. As you leave the chilling depths of the imperial crypt, you carry with you the silent, powerful narrative of a family whose very resting place speaks volumes about their astonishing rise and their eventual dramatic fall. You now delve into the most unsettling and poignant aspect of the Habsburg legacy, the profound and often tragic mental and physical decay that afflicted many members of the dynasty. A direct and horrifying consequence of their centuries-long commitment to inbreeding. This isn't just about a peculiar jawline, it's about the devastating biological cost of unchecked dynastic ambition. A disturbing truth that casts a long, painful shadow over their history. You feel the slow, insidious creep of genetic vulnerability, witnessing lives diminished by inherited ailments and the chilling descent into madness. You recall the Habsburg jaw, or mandibular prognathism, as the most visible marker of their inbred lineage. But this was merely the tip of the iceberg, as generations passed, and the practice of marrying close relatives intensified, especially within the Spanish Habsburg branch. The genetic pool became dangerously shallow. You observe how this endogamy led to a dramatic increase in the expression of harmful recessive genes, resulting in a host of debilitating physical and mental conditions that profoundly impacted the lives of emperors, empresses, princes, and princesses. The most common physical ailments include high infant and child mortality rates. You see numerous smaller coffins in the imperial crypt, a stark reminder of how many Habsburg children succumbed to illnesses that might have been survivable in a genetically healthier population. Their immune systems were often compromised, making them highly susceptible to common childhood diseases, reduced fertility. The very goal of their inbreeding to secure a robust line of succession was often undermined by its own consequences. Many Habsburgs struggled with infertility, making it difficult to produce heirs and creating constant dynastic anxieties. This led to frantic efforts to marry off remaining, often less genetically healthy, members, perpetuating the cycle. Physical deformities beyond the jaw. While the jaw was most prominent, you observe descriptions and portraits of other physical abnormalities large. Pendulous lower lips, enlarged tongues that made speech difficult and caused excessive drooling, and various skeletal abnormalities, often making walking and standing difficult. These features contributed to their often unflattering caricatures and real-life suffering, chronic illness, and general frailty. Many Habsburgs, particularly in the later Spanish line, suffered from a litany of lifelong illnesses, including digestive problems, frequent fevers, and general physical weakness. You see them constantly attended by physicians, their lives a continuous battle against bodily ailments, diverting their energy and attention from affairs of state. However, perhaps the most disturbing truth is the evidence of mental decay and cognitive impairments. While more difficult to diagnose definitively from historical records, contemporary accounts often describe a decline in intellectual capacity, learning difficulties, and periods of severe mental instability or even madness among some Habsburgs. You feel the profound tragedy of these afflicted individuals, born into immense power and expectation, yet limited by their own genetic heritage. The most extreme and heartbreaking example of this genetic decline is Charles II of Spain, 1661-1700, the last of the Spanish Habsburgs. You recall his severe physical deformities, the grossly exaggerated Habsburg jaw that prevented him from chewing, his huge tongue that made speech almost unintelligible, and constant drooling. But his mental state was equally tragic. You witness him as a child, showing severe developmental delays, unable to walk until age 4 and talk until age 8. Throughout his short, tortured life, he suffered from frequent epileptic fits, learning disabilities, and was often described as being childlike, weak-willed, and easily manipulated. He was almost certainly infertile. Ensuring the end of his line, He was truly the living embodiment of his family's genetic exhaustion. It's like watching a real-life horror show where the monster is not external, but the very bloodline itself, slowly consuming the royal family from within. The pressures of rule, combined with these inherent vulnerabilities, often exacerbated existing mental health issues. You see cases of paranoia, melancholia, and erratic behavior recorded in the annals of the Habsburg court, while mental illness was poorly understood and often stigmatized. The recurring patterns within the family hint at a genetic predisposition. Exacerbated by the constant stress and isolation of royal life, and intriguing yet somber. Detail is the practice of royal physicians meticulously documenting the physical and mental health of Habsburg monarchs. These detailed records, often accompanied by vivid descriptions and sometimes even grotesque anatomical studies after death, provide valuable, if unsettling, insights into the extent of their genetic burden. These documents, intended for private medical analysis, now serve as chilling testaments to the consequences of unchecked endogamy, making the private suffering of a royal line part of public historical record. The disturbing truth that the Habsburgs, for centuries, continued this practice of intermarriage despite the accumulating physical and mental toll, highlights a fundamental, if awful, calculation for them. The benefits of maintaining vast territories and an undisputed claim to power within the family were paramount. The physical deformities and illnesses were often viewed as unfortunate family characteristics or divine tests, rather than a direct consequence of their marital strategy. The purity of bloodline, ensuring political legitimacy, trumped biological viability, leading to profound human suffering. Historians still debate the extent to which early modern understanding of genetics allowed the Habsburgs to fully grasp the scientific implications of their inbreeding, or if they were simply trapped by dynastic tradition and the immediate political benefits of cousin marriages. The legacy of this genetic decay ultimately contributed to the weakening of the Spanish Habsburg branch, making them less effective rulers and precipitating their extinction, which then triggered the devastating War of the Spanish Succession. While the Austrian Habsburgs, perhaps due to a slightly wider marital pool, fared somewhat better, the underlying genetic vulnerabilities remained a silent, ever-present threat. The story of the Habsburgs' mental and physical decay is a chilling reminder of the profound, long-term consequences of dynastic ambition taken to its biological extreme. It's a poignant illustration of how the relentless pursuit of power, unchecked by scientific understanding or compassion for individual suffering, can lead to a slow, agonizing self-destruction. The very blood that granted them immense power also carried the seeds of their decline, leaving a deeply disturbing truth etched into the very faces and fates of its last. Most tragic members, you now arrive at the precipice of the Habsburgs' long reign, witnessing the dramatic fall of their vast empire in the tumultuous 20th century, after centuries of astonishing power, strategic marriages, and enduring through countless wars and internal struggles. The Habsburg monarchy, once a symbol of continuity and tradition, finally crumbles. You feel the seismic shifts of modern history, nationalism, world wars, and the inexorable march towards self-determination that ultimately shatter an ancient dominion and leave behind an enduring, complex shadow on Central Europe. You recall that the Habsburgs, particularly the Austrian branch, successfully weathered the storms of the 18th and 19th centuries. Notably under Maria Theresa, their empire, eventually known as the Austro-Hungarian Empire by the late 19th century, after the Compromise of 1867, which granted Hungary equal status, was a vast, multi-ethnic and multi-linguistic patchwork of lands. You observe its immense diversity: Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Poles, Croats, Serbs, Italians, Romanians, and many other groups, all living under one crown. This diversity was both its strength, providing vast resources and manpower, and its fundamental weakness, becoming a hotbed of simmering nationalistic tensions. It's like trying to keep a dozen different, highly flammable liquids in one barrel and hoping nothing sparks. The late 19th and early 20th centuries see the slow, but inevitable, rise of nationalism as the primary force challenging the Habsburgs. You feel the growing demands for independence and self-determination from the various ethnic groups within the empire. Serbs dream of a greater Serbia. Czechs yearn for their own Bohemian state. And Hungarians constantly push for greater autonomy. The Habsburg emperors, like Franz Joseph I, who reigned from 1848 to 1916, desperately try to manage these centrifugal forces through a combination of traditional loyalty, bureaucratic efficiency, and occasional repression. You see him, an old, weary monarch, steadfastly clinging to a fading imperial ideal, stubbornly resisting the inevitable changes sweeping across Europe, an intriguing, yet often overlooked detail of Franz Joseph's reign is his legendary commitment to duty and hard work. He was known for rising before dawn, meticulously reviewing documents, and working tirelessly to manage his vast, complex empire. This dedication, while admirable, ultimately reflected an inability or unwillingness to delegate power, or truly adapt to the burgeoning demands for self-rule from his diverse subject populations. His personal diligence couldn't compensate for the empire's systemic and structural challenges. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo in 1914 acts as the immediate catalyst for the empire's final collapse. You witness this horrifying event, the spark that ignites the powder keg of World War I, while the assassination was carried out by a Serbian nationalist. It quickly spirals into a global conflict due to the complex web of alliances and underlying tensions in Europe. You feel the immense, almost absurd, speed with which a single act of violence could plunge an entire continent into unprecedented destruction. The First World War. 1914-1918 becomes the ultimate crucible for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You see its armies, composed of soldiers from diverse nationalities, fighting bravely but often hampered by internal divisions, outdated military doctrines, and the sheer technological superiority of their opponents. The empire suffers catastrophic losses. Its economy is strained to the breaking point, and its multi-ethnic fabric begins to tear apart under the immense pressures of total war. You feel the widespread suffering, the immense human cost, and the growing disillusionment with the imperial project. It's like watching an old, intricately designed machine being pushed far beyond its limits, slowly breaking down piece by painful piece. The disturbing truth of the Habsburgs' final fall is that their very strength, the multi-ethnic nature of their empire, painstakingly acquired over centuries through marriage and occasional conquest, became their fatal weakness in an age of rampant nationalism. The diverse peoples who had once been held together by a shared loyalty to the emperor now yearned for their own independent nation-states. The war, by forcing these nationalities to fight for a dying empire, only accelerated their desire for self-determination. As the war draws to a close in 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is in a state of terminal collapse. You witness its fragmentation from within. National councils are formed in Vienna, Prague, Budapest, and other cities, proclaiming independent states. The imperial army dissolves, soldiers returning home to their newly formed nations. The last Habsburg emperor, Charles the Ferdinand, who ascended in 1916, attempts desperately to save the monarchy by reforming it into a federation. But it is too late. The tide of nationalism and the exhaustion of war are too powerful to resist. In November 1918, Emperor Charles III issues a proclamation, effectively relinquishing his rights to participate in state affairs. Though carefully avoiding a formal abdication, this subtle distinction reflects the Habsburgs' enduring belief in their divine right. Even as their empire crumbles around them, you feel the profound sense of finality. The quiet, almost anticlimactic end of a dynasty that had reigned for over 600 years. The vast, sprawling empire simply dissolves, replaced by independent republics and nation-states like Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and parts of Yugoslavia, Poland, and Romania. The enduring shadow of the Habsburgs on Central Europe is immense and complex, a legacy of peace and coexistence for some, particularly those who lived in the multi-ethnic empire. The Habsburg rule is remembered as a period of relative peace and coexistence among diverse peoples, a stark contrast to the nationalistic conflicts that followed. You hear nostalgic tales of a golden age where different cultures coexisted under a common imperial umbrella, suppression and resistance for others, especially the various national groups who yearned for independence. The Habsburgs represent foreign oppression, a symbol of stifling bureaucracy and the suppression of national aspirations, cultural and architectural heritage. You see their undeniable mark on the cities of Vienna, Prague, Budapest, and countless others. With their grand palaces, opera houses, and public institutions, their patronage left a rich cultural and architectural heritage that continues to define these cities. The disturbing truth of the Habsburg legacy is that their pursuit of power through intricate marriages and vast territorial accumulation, while creating an empire of unprecedented scale and longevity, also led to inherent weaknesses, the genetic burdens of inbreeding, and the insurmountable challenge of governing a multitude of nationalities in an age of rising nationalism. Their fall was not a sudden defeat, but the slow, inevitable consequence of internal contradictions exacerbated by the cataclysm of total war. The Habsburg story is a powerful reminder that even the most enduring dynasties are ultimately vulnerable to the forces of change, and that the grand strategies of one era can become the fatal weaknesses of the next. Their empire may have vanished, but their complex, often disturbing, shadow continues to shape the historical memory and political landscape of Central Europe, a testament to a family that truly shaped a continent, for better or for worse. The final echoes of imperial majesty now softly fade, the rustle of ancient maps and the weight of distant crowns dissolving into the quiet hum of the fan. You drift away from the grand palaces and the fields of silent battle, leaving the Habsburgs to their eternal rest. Their triumphs and their troubling truths finally settled into the annals of history. The vast, intricate tapestry of their dynasty gently concludes, allowing you to settle into the peaceful depths of slumber. All the power, all the pathos, now melts into the quiet night,